Hello everyone, this is your unemployed chef. Today we'll be making some delicious Belgian waffles. And the beauty of this recipe is that all that you need is, as long as you have flour, eggs, butter, salt, and syrup, and milk, you are well on your way to making this recipe, as well as water. This recipe is based on one that came with my Cuisine Art Belgian waffle maker. It doesn't really matter which waffle maker that you use, just make sure it's a Belgian waffle maker. Please do that. Baking is very unforgiving. That's all I have to say. So, as far as my ingredients, I'll be using 1.5 cups of flour, about 5 tablespoons of sugar, 1 teaspoon of a any type of neutral oil. This helps give the waffles a nice crispy exterior. Baking powder. I don't have any yeast on hand as the original recipe specifies, but baking powder is a great alternative. I believe it's sort of easier to find and work with. Um, just make sure that anytime you're using baking powder, not baking soda. Remember, baking is very unforgiving. It has to be equal to the amount of yeast within the recipe. So if it's 2 tablespoons of yeast, put in 2 tablespoons of baking powder. So on and so forth. Okay. We need 4 tablespoons of butter. I would say about a teaspoon of salt. Vanilla. I prefer to put 2 teaspoons of vanilla for my preference, but it's really 1 teaspoon. It's just to your preference. 3/4 a cup of water. Water is the most powerful ingredient in this recipe because water gives, if you ever had waffles in a hotel, those waffles are very airy and moist on the inside. Their secret ingredient is water. Primarily, sparkling water is the best. The bubbles in the sparkling water provide, oh, didn't bubble up. Well, you know there's bubbles in here. The bubbles in here provide a lot of air in the recipe and it makes the waffles fluffy. And of course, you can't forget milk. So let's get started. First off, I'm going to start by pouring in my 1.5 cups of flour. Technically, you're supposed to sift the flour into the bowl to make sure that the flour doesn't clump up when it mixes with the wet ingredients. So what I'm just going to do is take my whisk right here and just slowly ghetto sift it into the bowl. I don't have a formal sifter, but that's okay. Part of cooking is just making sure that you're able to adapt to your situation and come out on top of it. Okay. And next is my 5 tablespoons of sugar. So the difference between a Belgian waffle and a regular American waffle is that American waffles are much denser in texture. They're not as airy, and they don't have deep pockets. And they're a little less sweeter than a Belgian waffle. So this is my 4th tablespoon. And 5. Okay. And sift that in, mix it well. And next is going to be my baking powder. So as far as my baking powder, I would need 1.12 teaspoons. I'm a very, very precise person. And I know I'm being very nitpicky, but there's a reason why. Remember, guys, baking is very unforgiving. You have to be very precise with your ingredients. So I have 1 teaspoon of baking powder, And for the 0.12 part, I'm just going to do, let's see, just a little bit like this. There goes my baking powder. Whisk it really, really good. And we are done. Oh, and I just need about a teaspoon of salt to enhance flavor. Okay. This is a really nice breakfast for brunch and Sundays. If it comes out fine, just make sure that you pray to the baking gods. Sometimes the baking gods grant you the luck of baking, sometimes they don't, which I've experienced multiple times. So now it's time for our wet ingredients. What I'm going to do first is crack 2 eggs, and we're actually going to separate the eggs. We're separating the eggs because we're going to whip the egg whites, and the whipped egg whites will help make the waffles extra airy. So we're going to separate them like this and drop it in here. Okay. And make sure not to get any shells into the bowl. I'm trying my best. Okay. And then next, I'm going to put this to the side and put in 1 teaspoon of canola oil or any other neutral oil that you decide to use. And next, I'm going to melt my butter. I am measuring out 4 tablespoons of butter. The butter will provide a lot of nice richness to the batter and help bring everything together. While the butter is melting, I am going to whisk the eggs into the batter. Such. If it clumps up like this, that is okay. Once I add other liquid ingredients in, it won't be this way. As you can see, the butter is fully melted. What I'm going to do now is something called an ice bath. You don't have to do this, but it just ensures that the butter comes down to a cool enough temperature because of baking chemistry, blah, 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 magic, who knows what. I just have to cool down the butter. Just make sure that the butter looks like this. There are no other solids within the butter. And that's about it. My butter is currently sitting in an ice bath right now. An ice bath is just a bath with ice and water. So it sat in here for about a minute or so just to make sure that it cooled down all the way. And right now I'm going to put it into the flour. I don't know why I have to cool down the butter. I was never good in chemistry in high school or college. Um, I just don't know. But I'm doing it because baking is not forgiving. So the butter is in there. And next, I'm going to put in the water. I didn't forget about my egg whites. They just have to be added in at the end. So I'm putting in about a 3/4 of a cup of water, which is 6 ounces of water. Now make sure that you grab all of the clumps of flour and mix very well. Don't worry about it looking like this. It has a lot of personality. Just making sure that it stirs in evenly and that I get the clumps out. It's just that I just don't have enough liquid in there just yet, but that's okay. The funny thing about waffle batter is that, unlike pancake batter and cake batter, you actually do want to leave some lumps in the batter. If you take out a lot of the lumps, it makes the waffles dense like pancakes. So if you like your waffles coming out like pancakes, I don't know why you can't just go grab yourself a plate of pancakes if you want waffles, vice versa. That's just how it is. But you do not want to overmix the batter. So next is the vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon. And a little bit more. If you watched my last video about vanilla extract, you know I gotta like that. I don't want to flex, but 2 teaspoons. Mix just a little bit, not too much. And 3/4 of a cup of milk. And that is it for all of my wet ingredients. Just mix so the milk is fully incorporated. And you're probably thinking that the batter is way too liquidy. It is not, because once I put in the egg whites, it would become very airy and almost custard-like. As you can see, I didn't take all the lumps out. And I will mute this next part for your ears. I don't want to ruin anyone's ears, and I don't want to be sued. At this stage, I prefer to turn on my waffle iron. I just don't like it to be turned on for so long, especially since it doesn't have an off switch. Right now, I am turning on my waffle iron and putting it on my preferred setting. Not too soft, but not too hard, which is maybe like between a 4 and a 5. And now I'm going to whip my egg whites until they become stiff peaks. What I mean by stiff peaks, if the egg whites do this, if you put some pressure on it and take it out, it stays and it does not go back down. So that's what it's meant by stiff peaks. You can do this by hand. I highly don't recommend it. However, it's a great arm workout, and I know that some of you guys have not been able to get to the gym recently. Try whipping egg whites for a couple of days. I promise you will look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Okay. And now I'm going to fold in my whites into the batter. Look how fluffy that is. So without vigorously mixing, I'm just going to fold gently. And try not to press down the egg whites, but just keep going until everything is one uniform color. Keep mixing. Okay. Now it's time to make the waffle. My ready light is on my waffle maker, which means that it's nice and hot. And my waffle maker takes about, I want to say, 2/3 of a cup of this or 1 cup of this. It's just a lot of trial and error. You don't have to put any butter on your waffle iron. I have a non-stick iron, so I'm not too afraid of anything sticking. And I like to start off in the center and work my way around. And I'm going to push this batter to the edges so they touch the edge and just slightly overflow. Just adding a little bit more batter. Just want to make sure those grates are fully filled in. And now it's time to flip. Okay, my waffle is ready. And I'm hoping for the best. Let's see how it came out. And it did stick. Just a little bit. It broke apart a little bit. Just a little bit. Not too bad. That's what I get for not following directions. But as you can see, it's nice and crispy and fluffy and definitely airy. And that is how you make a Belgian waffle. Almost. You can top it with your choice of powdered sugar. You can eat this with syrup, or you can have it as a dinner with chicken and waffles, or any way that you like. Thanks for watching today. This is your Unemployed Chef. Like, comment, subscribe, and complain. And always taste that yum.